Yeah. So previous sessions, just before we discussed the what is the index and index types and B tree mechanism. Then we discussed about the clustered index and we discussed about the how the data is stored and we discussed about the fragmentation and fragmentation types. So now we can go for take a small example and we can create the table and we can insert some data and then we can go for search some data, then we can create the clustered index, then we can search data and then we can do some delete operations, then we can perform the same filter statement and how the query is happening. Then we can check what is the fragmentation after deletion and we can go for the rebuild and the organization theoretically. Okay, so let me go to my notepad. Then we can go for step by step. Okay, so what I'm going to do, let me go for, let me create a one table. Let me create a one table. It may take a little bit time compared to uh, other sessions. Why? Because uh, we need to test all the things. Okay, this queries. So now we'll go for the. I need to go for which one? I have to go for prod EU. Prod EU. Oh, I need to create a table first. What is the index? Oh, I did not create a. What I'm going to do? Oh, I already created. Okay, let me check it. ID name, house name. Okay, primary key is there. And if you primary key is there, cluster index will be there. Okay, not there. Okay, cluster index not there. Okay, table is created. Let me insert some data. Okay, then what I'm going to do? I'm going to insert some bulk inserts. So table is created. I'm going to insert some bulk inserts. Then I will go for here instead of I will go for primary key validation error, but don't think so. Okay, inserting. Let it inserting. Then what I am going to do? So I created the table and I inserted some data. Now I want to get some data. So here what I did, here I given 4,000. Okay, let it. After completion, we'll go for searching the this particular row. Let it complete. Okay. So meanwhile, we'll go for the uh, some other topic. So now the thing is uh, we created the table and we inserting the data. Let it insert. Then we'll go for the deletion and select statement. Now we are going to go for as I mentioned, we need to restructure the indexes, right? So whenever the fragmentation happen on the table, we need to go for the index restructure. Okay. So when we restructuring means we have a two kind of a restructuring, like rebuild the index and reorganize the index. So it is a very important. So rebuild the index and reorganize index means like a rebuilding index means like it will drop the index and it will recreate the index. That is kind of like a rebuild. Rebuild means like it will drop the entire index and it will recreate. So whenever you going for rebuild, what will happen? It required the double amount of the space in the transaction log or maybe temp database. So when we discussing about the what exactly TempDB, right? TempDB will stored in the rebuild operation site. So the rebuild is kind of like a bulk operations. So or maybe we can go for transaction log files. So while rebuilding the index, what we can do while doing the dropping and recreate, do the temp database or maybe the same transaction log file. So suppose my index size having 10 GB. If I want to go for rebuild, that time we would require 20 GB. Why? Because it will recreate the index and it will drop the index. So that is the reason when we go for the rebuild index, we required double amount of the space. The rebuild index, like index operations, we can specifically mention go and do this operation on the temp database or maybe save our user database. Why? Because temp database is the global database. Global database is a shared database. We can use all the databases which are hosted on that particular server. It's not only one for particular database, it is for all the global database. Then the rebuild. So the rebuild means like we are going to drop the index and recreate it. So when we need to go for rebuild. So the rebuild generally like in the most of the organizations, what we can tell the indexes are uh, the fragmentation percentage more than 20 above. Okay, the fragmentation percentage 20% above. That time we can mention go for rebuild. Some organizations what they will tell go for 30%. There is no thumb rule, but let me check. The thing is like when we go for rebuild, when we go for reorganize, what is the rebuild? What is the rebuild index and re reorganize the index and what are the IT standards? Okay. See here, rebuilding and reorganizing indexes are the SQL Server two maintenance operations. So why two maintenance? The maintenance means like we are doing some activity. While doing that activity, uh, it required some downtime. It's kind of like a logging. Why? Because while doing the operations, it won't allow the other transactions. Why? Because if you going for rebuild, what I mentioned, we are going to restructure the index. So it has to drop and it has to reallocate the like rearrange the storage or data, right? So that time it won't allow the operations. So the rebuild index it will provide the locking. So here the thing is like we have a kind of a two operations, online operations and offline operations. So these two maintenance operations are like online and offline. So offline means like it will drop the index and it will recreate. It's kind of a complete locking. Here the thing is like SQL server like a kind of a Microsoft is smart. So the uh, let me like off online means it will keep the index first. It will create one more index. Once everything is redesigned, it will drop the old index. That is the offline. Online. So offline means it will drop the index and it will recreate. Okay. Online means it will maintain the index and it will parallelly it will create the new index. Once the operation is done, it will drop the old index. But Microsoft is smart. Why? Because if you go for offline operations, it will having the slowness and it will giving the locking, right? Because it will put the lock while doing the operations. That means the business will be down. Okay. So if your operations are 24 by 7, the people are not agreeing providing the locking at downtime. So that time Microsoft telling don't go for paid versions. Like paid versions means like a enterprise version. So development we cannot use the standard edition. If you go for index operations, it will allow only for offline operations. Okay, it won't provide the online operations. Enterprise it will provide the online and as well as offline. So the people, like if I have the business, I don't want to down my business, right? Why? Because if I giving the downtime, like Saturday, Sunday, my business will run very good. But that time, if I want to go for downtime, so one time it's okay. But second time, if you're doing the same things, what will happen? The people were habituated to go for another shop, right? So then business will lose, right? So that time we have to go for enterprise. That is giving online. It is not disturbing the any activities because in the backend it will maintain one more kind of a table structure. Once it done, it will drop the world. So offline and online, the index we could go for offline and online. The offline, uh, uh, there is no online operations for standard. The online will available only for rebuild, like enterprise. Yeah. Now the thing is like when we go for the rebuild and reorganize, the standards are, yeah. So the standards are 30% above. The fragmentation is more than 30%. Like the page having more than 30% free space, that we can go for the rebuild operations. Okay. The reorganization is like it won't drop the index, but instead of that, what it will do, it will shuffle the leaf pages. So the data will be adjusted. Why? Because uh, it is not going to drop it. It will move the data from the pages. So the physically records leaf pages to the reducing the fragmentation. So the data will be shuffled in the pages. So reorganize, it won't drop the index. Instead of that, it will shuffle the pages. But rebuild, it will drop the index and it will recreate. So if you having the fragmentation from 5 to 30 percentage, that time we can go for reorganization operations to restructure the our index. So restructure the index means like go for reorganize, don't drop it, but arrange the data. Rebuild will go for more than 30, but while doing the rebuild, data will be index will be dropped and it will recreate. So index here, like this operation will go for offline and online. So let me go for here. So reorganize online operations, no table lock, pressures index statistics. I can explain for statistics later. Uh, See here, reorganize no lock. Why? Because it is not going to drop it. It is only adjusting the pages. So that is the reason there is no lock. And rebuild, come on, rebuild can go for uh, enterprise only online, remaining offline. And while doing the rebuild, we required more space. Why? Because it has the required double storage. So how to do that? What are the commands we have? Okay. So let me get the commands. How to rebuild the index and how to reorganize the index. So how to create the index means like create index name and on table name and provide the column name. That is the creating the index. So how to reorganize, how to rebuild the index. Okay. So how to reorganize, how to rebuild the index. Let me get the syntax. Get the syntax for. rebuild and reorganize. Okay. Yeah. So the rebuild like a alter. Let me copy and explain it. Yeah. So the keywords are alter is the keyword, index is the keyword, then uh, index name, on, table, reorganize. So what will happen? What are the table like index having that particular table will go for reorganize. So the create index like a create index name on table, right? Instead of the create, go for alter, and the last you have to use reorganize. If you want to go for rebuild, remove the reorganize, go for rebuild. So this is the syntax for rebuild and reorganize. So rebuild will go as above 20 percentage or above 30 percentage of the fragmentation. Okay. So reorg reorganize will go as from 5 to 20 percentage. If the fragmentation in between 5 to 20, go for reorganizations. If the fragmentation from 0 to 5, there is no rebuild, there is no reorganization. So this is the for rebuild and reorganization. When we need to go for rebuild, when we need to go for reorganize, and what are the offline and what are the online, and what are the difference between online and offline, and if you go for rebuild, what will happen, and if you go for reorganization, what will happen. So let me recap. uh, a rebuild, reorganize, both are database maintenance activities that will give some kind of a down activities like locking operations. Why? Because we are going to restructure the data. So here the two maintenance actions, rebuild or reorganize, when the fragmentation from 20 percentage above or 30 percentage above, then we'll go for rebuild. The fragmentation from 5 to 20 percentage, we have to go for reorganize the index. The offline and online, the offline means it is going to drop it and recreate. Online means it is going to create a one more index, then drop it. So here a reorganization, there is no offline, online. Why? Because here we are not going to drop it, right? Let me double check. Let me reorganize. Organize. Do we have offline, online, SQL Server? Okay. Okay. So here the reorganization is telling meaning does not block access the builder index. So by default, it's a on only, like a reorganization by default on. Why? Because it is not going to drop, right? So that is the reason it reorganize always on. It is not providing any lock because the table will be there, but index will be there, and it will arrange the pages. Uh, come here. Yeah. So, but if for a rebuild, if you want to go for online, that will provide only for enterprise. Okay. This is the and syntax for the rebuild and reorganize. So this is the very important interview last. What is the standard fragment? go for rebuild and reorganize. When we go for rebuild, when we go for reorganize, and what are the difference between reorganize and rebuild, and what will happen if you go for rebuild the things. So the rebuild and reorganize don't go for in the business hours. We have to go for the non-business hours. So even though reorganizes not providing any lock, but we have to go for the non-business hours. Why? Because reorganization it will also shuffle the pages, right? So if you go for business hours, the pages will be modified, right? So that is the reason don't go for business hours. Always go for the non-business hours. Generally, we'll go for weekend set particular point of time. Okay. This is the for rebuild and reorganize. Let me stop the recording. Then we can go for back to our practical, which I stopped previously. Okay. Let me stop the recording.